One of the biggest plugins on FF14 just got cease and desist by Square Enix, and now it's pandemonium. This video isn't going to talk about just Mare or modding. I'm going to talk about some of the worst plugins out there and how Square Enix strategy to deal with third-party tools has been terrible and really doesn't solve anything. This video is going to be part script, part ranting. I've played this game for the past 8 years, starting in late Evansward and early Stormblood. I've cleared most red tiers and a couple of ultimates, both on patch and off patch. I would put myself as a rather high-end raider, but also I made and maintain plugins for Devaluation. This video is my opinion and my opinion alone. It does not represent the views of anyone else involved within plugin or modding in any way. Little bit of context and history. Modding in FF14 at first was very small. You needed something called text tools to apply mods, and it had the potential to break your game file. Needless to say, at the beginning modding was incredibly underground and not for everyone. Devaluation did not exist, and the community did not have the thorough understanding of how the game worked internally. As time passed, the community started slowly figuring out how this game worked. One of the oldest and most well-known third-party tool, ACT, parsing software, and most importantly the website where the parsers were uploaded, FFLogs, already had made some waves, but eventually it grew accepted, and now it's fully ingrained in the community. Not having your log publicly accessible on FFlog is usually seen as a sign of someone having paid for a clear. As the community understanding the game evolved, the tools available became better and easier to use. Devaluation, the plugin framework that lets developers write software to interact with the game directly, was created. People started figuring out how most of the subsystem that renders your character worked, and that led to the creation of two plugins that are basically always paired together, Glamour and Penumbra. The former to modify the appearance of your character exactly how you want, and the latter to apply mod to change how certain item looked in the game. These plugins really kicked off the growth of the modding scene. Now you did not need to mess around in text tools. Download your mod, put it in Penumbra, and it's done. And if the mod is bad or crashes your game, just reboot and your game install is completely safe. Now, the reason why Mare was shut down is unknown to everyone. Square Enix does not communicate about their action, and it's really anyone's guess as to why they decided to do it. Some people might feel it's justified because they think Mare is the reason why there's so many sex clubs in the game, and that it's only usage for people to goon with each other on the game. I'm not a huge mod user, in fact I've stopped using them for years now. However, I think it would be too reductive to say that Mare was only for that. Sex club and ERP has always been a thing in FF14, and I suspect that even if you could magically stop Mare from existing, it would still be a thing. Before we go further, I'd just like to mention that I don't think it's gonna be such a huge blow to the game. I think there will be some consequences, of course, but I doubt that the game itself will go down because of this incident. Large ventures like MMOs, after they succeeded, tend to take quite a lot of time to die, and Square Enix will need to basically chain bad decision like 50 times in a row to kill it. Well, Square Enix isn't known for its rational decision making, so again, who really knows? At the very least, we still have a couple of years ahead of this game. So Square Enix strategy for a long time about plugins and mods in general, and even beyond that, ACT and all the third-party software, was to just ignore it and just don't talk about it in game, don't mention it anywhere, right? And we will not go after you. This strategy has kind of worked. I'm forced to reluctantly agree that for a little bit there was peace, and the modding side, the plugin side, managed to grow for a while now, and it has grown into a very large and developed ecosystem. A lot of what plugins do is quality of life changes that makes the game better, and especially for people who play the game a lot, like me, because the truth is that FF14 as a game has a lot of technological debt, I guess you could say it, but I don't think it's tech debt really. It's just they never want to make any changes to the existing system to make it better. They never go back. A common example is that for the expert delivery, right, for your grand companies, you have to click manually for each item, but most of the time you're gonna come up to the stand with possibly 40 to 50 items, and you gotta stand there and click and confirm and click and confirm. This has never been addressed or changed, even though this is usually a common point. And in fact, jokingly, this is something we see often in Discord being mentioned, that people would like this to be automated because they don't want to sit there and click for like 10-15 minutes to empty out their inventory of garbage. If this was just one area of the game that didn't age well or was abandoned, it would be fine, but the truth is, many aspects of the game have the same kind of weird limitation to it that have never been addressed despite player feedback. and then the system just gets abandoned by Square Enix and it's left like that forever. This isn't an FF14 only problem, and many Square Enix games suffer from the same thing. Now would be a good time to mention that Diamond is fully open source software, which means that the team behind Diamond can't really enforce any kind of rules on what plugins are made. There are guidelines to prevent botting or cheating plugins from being on what's called the main repo, which is like the default plugin list you get when you have a fresh install of Diamond, but it can't be enforced anywhere. Like if somebody wants to make a plugin to just cheat or bot or do whatever they want really, they just can, and there is nothing that the Diamond staff either can do to stop it. Now, this wasn't a problem at first because a lot of the early plugins were simply quality of life stuff. Things like chat bubble or simple tweaks usually made things a little bit better for tedious tasks that you had to do in game. It added some innocent features that didn't really give you any advantage and just made your experience a little bit better. Square Enix strategy worked fine when plugins and mods were just limited, sort of small quality of life changes to the game that they either were unwilling or couldn't do themselves. However, the scene simply kept growing. It doesn't matter how much you tell people not to talk about it, eventually it just reaches a user base size where you simply can't keep it under wraps anymore. Striking down Mare alone, I think, is incredibly stupid because even if you don't like its existence, the genie is out of the bottle. It's been shown that it can and will work. First of all, Mare only fork was a fork made for users who got banned from the original plugin, and the reason they got banned was for using LFL not safe for work mods. And now we have this sort of mini exodus of players going to this service thanks to Square Enix banning the mainstream version. And I think in the coming weeks probably we'll see all kind of new Mare forks pop up, and that will be unsaved or used as malware distribution vectors against users who don't know better. But beyond Mare, beyond modding really, I think this is just how stupid this strategy is. It doesn't prevent or fight anything, and when you become big enough you just get to be a part of the game and Square Enix doesn't care. And this is going to be what the rest of the video is about. There's so much cheating in this game because Diamond and ACT as well can't really enforce restriction on what kind of plugins are made. People started making combat related plugins, and at the beginning you had things like FFXIV combo that quote unquote simplify some of the in-game combos, and well, I think most serious raiders will argue that FFXIV combo does not give you any meaningful advantage, but the beginning of basically pushing the envelope when it comes to plugin. It gave the community the sense that now we get to write the rules of the game with plugins, and little by little combat-related plugins starting popping up and becoming more and more normalized. People will say that Mare users were too bold and didn't hide enough, but if you open Party Finder right now, I guarantee you there's probably at least 5 ultimate PF running automarkers by typing AM in the description, and this is in broad daylight. They know Square Enix does not punish this behavior. So the problem that botting plugin and like cheating plugin create is the devaluation of in-game achievement. If you see somebody with a legend title, the legend title is here to signify that this person has invested a lot of time at getting good at the game and they want to show it to you. They want to show that they're a good player and they've invested a lot of time into beating a goal in the game that should act as a proof that they're good. You see this kind of social system in competitive video game, for example. If I take League of Legends as an example, being Diamond is actually a good achievement. It's an achievement to be proud of because not a lot of people will manage to rank up to Diamond. It's like 1%, I think right now the number is like 1%, top 1% of the community or something. Yeah, I don't think it's completely unfair to say that a lot of the reason why people do legend title or do rank games in League of Legends is for social status, is they want to prove to the world that they're a good player and that they know how the game works, and they will do that by either achieving a rank in a competitive video game or beating a duty that's very, very hard in FF14. And the problem that this botting plugin creates is that if you can change the rule of the game and you can make it easier for you and obviously make it like way more tolerable or like require it way less time to complete, then you're kind of devaluating that in-game achievement. And so if everyone has a legend title, then nobody really is a legend. It seems a little bit corny to say, but that's sort of how it works, right? A lot of MMO reward structure is based with social rewards. Another example could be the Big Fish title, which I don't even know you get it because I don't care about fishing, but imagine if you could have a plugin that just automates all the fishing for you and then you have nothing else to do. And the achievement is kind of meaningless, isn't it? Another example is the Scent of the Firmament title, which is titled for like the Ishgard restoration, which is given to like the 100 best crafters for like expert recipe. But if you can just bot using artisan, is it really a best crafter, or is it just who spent the most time and with the most resources, the most skill, just sitting there with the artisan, just perma farming expert recipe, right? By devaluating top endgame achievement, you're giving players less reason to play. Why should I bother learning an ultimate if I can just pop in a couple of plugins and like just clear the duty for me? And if you think that plugins aren't there yet and you don't think that, you know, Splatoon or Leamington is ridiculous and automarket, it gets way worse. I guarantee you it gets way worse. There are plugins out there that can play the game entirely for you. It's really hard to understate like how big of a problem this has become. And I'd like to share a little bit about my experience. During Pandemonium, second year, I believe, I was leading a static and I recruited a new player, actually. Somebody who started the game very recently. It was their second red tier or the first, I think. And, you know, I looked over his log to make sure he was a good fit for the group. And I was like, man, this guy, for somebody who started playing the game, is really playing very well. And when we got him, we started realizing that, you know, he's moving very fast to the safe spot and he always knows things ahead of time. And turns out this guy was augmented, bro. This guy was a cyborg. He could have get up from his chair and the game would have still played itself. It's insane. I cannot stress how much cheating plugin he really had. And that was like a shock to me because that was the first time somebody I think I interacted with cheated this blatantly, you know? Like, well, they didn't even care, right? To them it was completely normal. If there is no standards for how difficult a certain achievement is because you can just install a couple of plugins that remove the difficulty or the time investment required to get it, then you'd be an idiot for not doing it, and rightfully the broader community will just view these achievements as not prestigious or just assume that you probably bought it or cheated it. It's sort of like the Dark Souls difficulty debate. If Dark Souls had difficulty sliders, it would fundamentally change the experience for people that don't play on the same difficulty. By having this unified, very hard difficulty function both as a social mechanism, this game is very hard and beating it would be seen as an achievement, and it serves as a sort of unification of experiences where everyone has had to beat the same challenges and as a result they feel a sense of camaraderie. And to come back to why I think Square Enix need to change this strategy of just ignoring the entire thing and tell people to not talk about it, it's because it doesn't change anything. People will keep using plugins, a new version of Mare will eventually exist, just like if they shut down Auto Duty or the auto markers, another one will pop up. I've seen some people say that if Diamond was banned it would solve everything, but the reality is that it wouldn't. It would make it significantly less safe to use plugin, but it will do exactly what striking down Mare has done. It will push people to questionable alternative. Problem is that because Square Enix is unwilling to enforce a thermal service or moderate the game at all, means that plugin, no matter if it's one like Mare that's not really super disruptive to the game as a whole, or Auto Duty, which is literally a botting plugin, which I think is far more damaging to the game, and I'm not even gonna get into all the auto-rotation plugin, but they are treated by Square Enix as the same thing. Eventually, plugins that gain enough popularity become part of the game. I think it's safe to say 99% of people who will clear Uwu today are probably using a form of auto markers to solve jail. Probably 99% of people who will clear top are using a form of auto marker for P5. When I was doing through on patch, we would sometimes up in PF for fun with a couple of friends. And what shocked me is that I didn't think that any mechanic in through was so hard it needed auto markers. And yet, on patch, you'd be hard pressed to find a PF without them. To be fair, I don't think this is the case anymore, but this is not a good sign. If you let the community in charge of deciding how hard they want a fight to be, they will always pick the easiest option every time. It doesn't matter what the noble raiders that only care about beating the challenge have to say on Twitter. We know that when the chips are down, they will bend the knee and turn on auto markers because otherwise they can't find a group to play with. Literally, a friend of mine had his static explode in top P5 because the group couldn't agree on whether or not they wanted auto markers in P5. So the group shattered and went their own way. Today it's auto markers, tomorrow it's Splatoon, and then by the end of Yoshida 10-year plan, everyone was raiding on FF14 as to be an augmented cyborg to even have a chance at joining a fresh prog party. Talked a lot about high-end content, but botting itself is also a huge issue. I think by now everyone knows about the bots hiding beneath headrights, gathering remotely and posting ads for guild-selling sites against real money. I believe plugins have allowed Square Enix to be complacent in certain aspects of the game, the most notable one being that you can't double weave if you have a high ping. We have a plugin and a third-party software to fix that, and so Square Enix does not care about fixing what is objectively a bug in the netcode of the game. What saddens me is the community response to Mare cease and desist. Obviously, there are modders that are outraged at this change, but also a large portion of the community seem to revel in this and think that this will somehow make all the plus 18 club ads disappear. I think I'd like to finish this video by saying that as a community, even if you don't care about Mare or modding or plugin or whatever, you should be sad at the poor handling by Square Enix of the situation. In order for MMO to work, it needs to appeal to as many player demographic as possible. For me and my fellow raiders to enjoy your ultimate raids, there need to be people who mostly enjoy the story. There need to be people that mostly enjoy the crafting and people that mostly enjoy the social aspect. MMOs, by nature, can only work by appealing to an incredibly broad audience and have a little something for everyone. Anyone who claims that FF14 main hook into the game is the story is, I think, just as wrong as someone who claims that FF14 main hook is high-end raiding. By the nature of the game, FF14 main hook is a combination of all of those systems. And again, by that very nature, FF14 can only work by being in this together. I would like to remind everyone that gooners aren't the reason why your chat is filled with plus 18 club ads. The reason is that Square Enix, the company you pay $13 a month plus expansion to play this game, too cheap to pay for moderators to clean up the chat. And if you are unhappy with the state of the game, you should direct your anger toward the same company. You can say whatever you want about certain part of the community, but just like you, there's some money goes toward building the content you enjoy, and I don't think it's very productive to attack other members of the community, especially when the game isn't doing so well right now. To close this video, I'd like to say that thankfully we aren't to the point where cheating or botting plugins have reached mass adoption. But if Square Enix continues this strategy of not punishing players and occasionally sending what amounts to an angry letter, then we will eventually get there, and by then it'll be too late to do anything about it. Striking down Mare is sending a clear message that it doesn't matter if your plugin hurt the game or not. All that matters is whatever standard Square Enix uses for visibility. And if that's the only standard for what's okay or not, then it doesn't matter how much you cheat or bot. Just do it because there's no punishment. Anyway, that's about it. Take care.